Well, hello there, you fine-ass folks. Thanks for tuning into the Crash Bang Boom podcast. Today's guest is drummer Josh Andrews of the UK's own Pupil Slicer. Josh and I get into everything from the intense experience of recording drums for their most recent record, Blossom, to strange English accents, incorporating tracks and electric sections in their live show, how COVID seems to have bolstered the overall reception of the band, touring while working, Chris Pennie of the Dillinger Escape Plan as an influence, and much more. Tour dates start in the UK October 25th. It can be found on all their socials as well as pupilslicer.com. So get up on it. Today's episode is sponsored by oneuploops.com. Drummer, producer, and more, Carson Gant and his team spent an incredible amount of time recording over 430,000 shaker, tambourine, and hi-hat loops at every possible tempo and multiple feels with incredible mics and outboard gear for you to pick and choose. It's organized for you to find exactly what you need with just a few clicks, and everything feels and sounds incredible. You can sign up for free to check it out and gain full access to all 430,000 loops starting at just $6 a month thereafter. No download limits, whatever you want, whenever you want. New loops, one-shots, and drum breaks are being added weekly. Definitely a great addition to the arsenal of any drummer and or producer, and I can vouch for that myself. So check it out, and that's oneuploops.com. Crash Bang Boom podcast can be found on basically all streaming platforms as far as I know. Feel free to check out any of the previous 260 plus episodes and give me a like and or a subscription and or a positive review. And if you aren't already following me on Instagram or Facebook, that's Jody Smith, Crash Bang Boom on Insta, and Crash Bang Boom podcast on Facebox. All right, damn it. Josh Andrews, Pupil Slicer. Hope y'all dig it. Crash Bang Boom.
Crowds go mad with joy.
Yes! All right, I'm here with Josh Andrews of Pupil Slicer, straight out of the UK. Josh, what's happening, man?
Hey man, nice to be here, just chilling. We're sort of in a little bit of a break period from shows at the moment. Our festival season's just finished, and we're getting gearing up for our next tour in October, November, and practicing some new songs from the album to play for the first time.
Nice. What were some of the festivals that y'all played previously?
So the big one we did this year was Download in the UK, which was a really amazing festival to play. I've personally been a massive fan of that festival since I was, a young teenager, and it was probably the first festival, proper in a field festival I went to, and to play it this year was a watershed moment. And played Arctangent again, which is a great festival that champions a lot of sort of alternate metal bands from around the world, and a lot of up-and-coming bands. We played that again this year, and we also played Boomtown Festival, which is traditionally a dance festival and kind of like rave EDM music, and we were sort of poked away in this really cool little stage that was just playing metal, and
nice.
We had a really great time playing that as well. And I think that's there might be one I'm forgetting, but those are the really memorable ones.
It's interesting that the sort of at times the electronic influence in some of your music with certain parts or segues, etc., that y'all would be out of England. And from my understanding, electronic music is as massive as it ever was in England. Is that would you say still the case?
Yeah, it's absolutely huge. I mean, this festival, it's not really something I'd go to.
Yeah.
We got to that and we were kind of wasn't really sure what to expect, but it was so full up of people. And then when I did a little bit of reading online, it was saying that they've increased the capacity by so many tens of thousands over the years, and it just keeps growing and growing. We opened the set with a single from our new album, No Temple, which has like a little drum and bass intro in it. So we were like, yo, we're Pupil Slicer, so we played drum and bass just to get everyone a little bit on our side. we normally say rock and roll, but
right.
We thought that was more appropriate. But
damn.
Yeah, really, really cool crowd. And it felt very honored to be one of the metal bands that was selected to represent the scene at that festival.
Cool. Are there many other bands that you feel a kinship with in England necessarily?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very cool scene at the moment. you've got bands like Rolo Tomati, who are kind of like the godfathers of mathcore and the more experimental metal we play. Employed to Serve, who we're touring with later this year. Ithaca, who we've toured with, a great metalcore band. Harriet, who we've also toured with and played a lot of shows with, another great up and coming metal band. So yeah, there's a lot we sort of share a lot of great kinship with, and I think it's an exciting time to be part of the UK metal scene. I mean, that's just a tiny selection of the amount of amazing bands that I could just think of the top of my head, but there's so many more and so many exciting things happening at the moment.
Right. When I was living in Brooklyn, St. Vitus Bar is one that opened there, and it was really became sort of a beacon for the heavier bands, and ultimately, I think encouraged and inspired even kids to pick up instruments and get into bands like that so they could be a part of the scene. So it was really awesome to witness that, how a single club can affect and inspire and increase the range of a relatively small, sort of subgenre of rock or metal or whatever you want to classify it as. Is there any particular club that sort of acts as in a similar fashion where a lot of these bands, when y'all do play local shows, that's sort of a place for that?
Just sort of speaking in terms of London, where I'm from, London's such a huge city. And when people sort of chop it up, they normally split it between north, south, east, and west.
Right.
I live in South London, and it'd normally be the case that you'd go into North London for any metal show, sort of around the Camden area, which some if you've got American listeners, they may have heard of because it's quite a popular destination. But it seems like there's a few places popping up in South London now, and one venue that pops into my mind is the New Cross Inn, which is in New Cross, South London. It's about a stop away from the centre, across the river. And that seems like it's really championing the sort of metalcore, hardcore scene at the moment. And if you see like a big hardcore band come over from America and they're playing that venue, you can sort of expect them to get, a very cool sort of, reception and a crowd deserving of that kind of music. Because there's some venues you play that, people aren't really giving much back, but I don't think I've ever been to a sort of hardcore or metalcore gig there where people haven't turned up. So
right.
It's nice that there's a venue where it's a little bit outside of the like popular mainstream venues that are a bit more controlled in sort of marketing and prices and stuff flourish.
Absolutely, man. It sounded like you said you're in southern London.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. When you think about strange, like English accents, I've heard a few derivations of the English accent within England. Is there any particular place where even you're like, what, that's kind of a crazy accent? Because obviously, we both speak the same language, but obviously the accent is completely different. I'm from the South. Although I don't have that much of a Southern accent. I think I did at some point prior to moving to New York, but I lost it over the course of years of having to reiterate myself because people didn't understand what I was saying at times. So I was just curious if there's like an English accent that even you're like, man, that's a crazy accent. Is it Liverpool?
Yeah, Liverpool. So Scouse accent, that would be called. People from Merseyside, that kind of area. Geordie accent is very nice on the ear. But it can be a little bit difficult. It's not actually in the UK, so to speak, but in Southern Ireland, we recently played Cork, which is it's a really, really unique, deep Irish accent. But obviously they're speaking English.
Right.
And I remember going to the shop and I sort of said, "Oh, hi, can I get a coffee or something?" And the girl went, "Pardon?" Like that, sort of almost like, I can't understand you. And I was like, to be fair, we both sound so different to each other. But it's very weird that, because I've got quite I guess it's called an RP English accent, which is kind of the standardized kind of accent. But yeah, it's crazy. I mean, even in London, just as I said, it's sort of split up into these different areas.
Yeah.
If you've got a really keen ear, you probably could tell the difference between someone who was born in East London and someone who was born in South London.
Wow.
Depending on the person, but
sure.
Yeah, there's so many different accents. It's I don't really get how it works because these places are only like half an hour away from each other, but you can get different accents. I mean, if you want to hear a good South London accent, watch Only Fools and Horses. If you haven't seen that, that's
What's the name of it?
Only Fools and Horses. It's like a popular UK comedy, and
Okay.
you'll hear a perfect South London accent. That's exactly what it's like.
All right, good to know, man. Well, congrats on the new record, Blossom, man. I guess tell me a little bit about the process of writing and recording it, and whether the process started before COVID or during, or whether it seems that if people hadn't sort of adopted the technology to allow for distant recording and demo and ideas during COVID, it certainly seemed to inspire that. But I guess when did y'all start writing it and recording that record?
Yeah, I'm trying to think when the starting point was. I think it was in peak lockdown. We'd released our first album, which was done all before COVID,
Right.
but it was released during COVID. And,
Uh-huh.
we felt very fortunate in that respect because we'd had, when we were in complete lockdown and you couldn't even go out the house to sort of socialize with other people, we were like, great, we've got an album. And Prosthetic Records picked it up.
Yeah.
And that sort of things took off from there, and people obviously had a lot more free time to listen to new music. But I think in lockdown we started writing some stuff. Before the sort of writing process would be Kate, our guitarist, would write a whole song, tab out the drums, or we'd jam together in a room and then write the songs together sort of on the spot, and then go to a computer and tab it all out. It was a little bit different for the second album because we were in lockdown. Some of the songs on the album I've sort of recorded just drum parts and sent them to Kate, and then Kate adapted some of the drum parts into songs and used them as jumping off points for ideas. I tabbed some drums out, which I've never really done before, which was an interesting experience because sometimes you write stuff and then you get to the drum kit and you're like, that's a really good idea, but I need to play it like this for it to work as a drummer rather than a computer. But
right.
I mean, I think that's half the thing that's fun about being a drummer is sort of knowing your limitations and then finding, I wouldn't call it cheating, but ways to do things that work on the kit rather than in your head or how you've tabbed it out. So
Right.
whether it's like, I'm gonna hit the pedal twice on this one rather than use two toms because then it's easier to get to this cymbal and stuff like that. So yeah, I did a little bit of tab work and sort of learned along the way how to tab out drums with the kit in mind when I'm sort of sat on my computer. And then towards coming out of COVID, me and Kate did our old method of just getting together in a room and jamming stuff out. I think the best example of that is the song Departure in Solitude, which I think is the second track on the album, which was more traditional pupil slicer writing session, which was just me and Kate in the room and jamming and then piecing things together.
Yeah, I've said it before where when I'm working on electronic projects of my own and then sort of sequencing out drums that to my eye and ear on a computer screen seem to work, then going to a kit and trying to work out the mechanics to it. Sometimes you do figure that you need to play it differently, or then the inverse of that is even cooler in that you adapt your playing as closely to get it as closely as possible to what you originally sequenced, and it makes you sort of take it a different perspective and a different approach to playing. And that's kind of an interesting learning curve that I didn't expect when I initially started messing around with electronic music, but it's cool that that's a thing,
It's definitely an interesting way of approaching drums, and it's nice to have different ways you can approach the creative process, really, because it just brings out the best in you as a physical drummer on the actual kit itself. So yeah, 100% agree.
Absolutely. When it came time to record the drums, what was your experience and where did y'all go to do it?
So we recorded it with Lewis Johns, who does a lot of the UK metal bands. Most really cool projects coming out of the UK. Probably going to see his name in the album cover somewhere.
Right.
Being involved in it. But yeah, that was the first time as a band we'd all gone down to his studio and stayed there. I think we did the drums in about 7 or 8 days.
Wow.
It was pretty stressful and hair pulley at times. And Lewis is a massive perfectionist, so we had to go back and do a lot of stuff just to get every single one, a nice strong rim shot. I had about 1 million blisters on my hands by the end of it, and I think it was worth it, and I hope the results sort of show on the record, because sometimes you see people, commenting, it's like, oh, these drums just sound really fake. It's like, no, they're all completely real. I don't know what's like, giving you that impression, because like we know we worked super hard just to get like every single hit as clear and crisp as we possibly could on the album. So yeah, I think it is a really cool experience, and yeah, we may work again with him in the future.
I think there's different approaches from what I've heard in modern studios, in that you can use a sample kit to fatten up or change sort of or add to the voicings of the natural kit. And then sometimes people even sample their own kit as well. So you have those, whether it's a cymbal hit, a bass drum hit, a snare hit, et cetera. So it sounds like he really held you to the fire and you had to just play all this stuff the best you could and as consistently as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was kind of a learning curve for me, because we had gone in the studio with him previously to record a single, just sort of just to, feel each other out, see how we work with each other. And we were really happy with the results of that single. We thought it sounded great. And then we went into the studio. But yeah, as I was saying, it was a learning curve for me, just because it was just a hell of a lot of material. And
Yeah.
we recorded the first album, similar circumstances, in a few less days, but that was with drummers who listen to this. Mike Malley, and you probably might know him from Monuments, and he kindly helped us record the drums for that. And but yeah, it was a bit less focused on the rim shots and all that stuff, and a little less punishing, but it was still a bit stressful. But learning the music to Lewis's standards definitely was a hard task, and it's made me better as a drummer, because I even, approached my live drumming a little bit in a different way. I'm not half-arsing a lot of hits like I had been, which I think's really cool. So yeah, the process as a whole, definitely brought out a lot of good in me.
Right. Yeah. In an isolated environment of recording your drum solo where you have producers, engineers, your band, and yourself, isolating it again to hear every little nuance of it, as opposed to in a live context where there's amps and there's all the noise and all the distractions and lights and crowds and everything else. Those nuances are not generally as obvious, especially with like heavier, intense music like that. Now, obviously, if you fuck up a part and the train gets off the track and you train wreck a song, which I've done before, that's pretty obvious. But as far as some of the other stuff, I think it's kind of a given when playing such intense music that it's its own live beast, and that's just what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Because they're different things completely, and you're going to notice a flubbed hit in a record much more than in a live setting. But
Totally.
it's still cool to improve, and it's using one method of drumming, which is studio drumming, to think about how you approach other things, which I think always just improves you as a drummer. And it's been quite a learning curve live as well. I mean, we've recently, because we have so many sort of electronic influences and things coming through in the new record, we're playing along to a click now, and we have some backing track as well. So that's been quite an experience.
Oh yeah.
As someone who's never played to a click live ever, and I'm just used to playing, me just being the sole conductor basically for the rest of the band.
Right.
That took a bit of adjustment, but I'm enjoying it. It feels definitely feels like a lot more controlled. And then we do still have songs that we play off click as well, just because they're a bit more frantic, and I think it kind of needs that energy rather than sticking straight to the metronome. So
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's been really cool. That's been something we've introduced early this year and are still doing, and getting to grips with. But yeah, I think it's all good.
Nice, man. I definitely hear like some Dillinger Escape Plan, and more specifically sort of Chris Pennie's vocabulary that he developed with Ben and Dillinger and what y'all do, and especially on the prior record Mirrors, but certainly there are moments for sure on Blossom as well. What are your thoughts, I guess, on Dillinger and sort of that vocabulary that was created with Chris Pennie on some of those early records?
Yeah, I mean, he's undeniably probably one of the most talented and interesting drummers, I'd say, in the metal scene.
For sure.
in the metalcore, mathcore scene, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
And yeah, in the first album in particular, I'd say he was 100% one of the main influences on the drumming. That's the stuff that I wrote and the stuff that Kate put together for that album.
Hmm.
Even on the new album, there's sort of hints of him in there. I think I mentioned during COVID, I was, sending Kate ideas for drum parts, and I kind of had him in mind when I was sort of jamming, what would he do in this situation and the kind of patterns he'd bring. And I think Kate really likes that kind of music. I'd say, Dillinger and Converge are probably two of Kate's bigger influences. Don't want to speak too much on Kate's behalf, but
Right.
that's definitely, a drummer that I'd say influenced me a lot. More so on the first album, but
Right.
I think the blueprint's still, a little bit across this new album on some of the songs.
Yeah. When you think about his influence on you, how did you sort of break down some of his parts to understand a little bit better what was going on technically? Were you able to just listen to the songs and pick it out, or did you watch videos, or like how did you sort of get around that?
I've always been a bit of an audio visual learner, so videos on YouTube are
Yeah,
always really good to help understand drum parts for me.
totally.
I think you can get some isolated tracks as well from some of the earlier Dillinger albums if you look around,
Wow.
or some without, no, not isolated drums completely, but without the vocals and stuff, which I think definitely I'd recommend to anyone to listen to the Calculating Infinity instrumentals, because they sound different with the vocals. It's really weird, and you can focus a lot more on the drums and the instrumentation. So listening to that helped me a lot. I wish there were some videos of that out there somewhere. And I've even read some interviews with them about their approach to writing their first album, and I think it was just Ben just like faster,
Right.
basically.
Yeah.
Just like, which is, you got to walk before you run. But
Yeah.
it definitely took me a while to get some of the bits up to speed, and them faster parts in the studio are always quite difficult to hammer out. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's cool. He's definitely highly up there on the influences for me.
For sure, man. How old were you when you got your first kit, and what were some of those early influences, and or sort of how did those influences evolve as you started your drumming journey?
So yeah, I'm trying to think. My dad had the drum kit that he bought when he was younger, and it was just in my loft. And I think I was always sort of quite a rhythmic person. I used to like bang on tables and stuff when I was little. So
Absolutely.
he got the drum kit out and gave it to me probably when I was just before 10 years old. And then I used to listen to a lot of music in the car with him. So it'd be like Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd, stuff like that.
Sure.
So I'd say my number one influence growing up was definitely John Bonham, drumming along to that sort of stuff.
Nice.
The Who as well. I mean,
Right on.
Keith Moon's, I wouldn't call him an underrated drummer, but he's definitely, a very influential drummer
For sure.
for me. And, just his kind of looseness and, filling the space, basically playing whatever he wants and doing fills wherever, and it just still sounding great. Definitely influenced me. And then I guess when I was about 14, 15, I started going to shows. One of the first shows I got tickets for, my mate showed me Machine Head and brought me along to one of those shows. And then Lamb of God as well. So that's where it basically all came from, just going to those early shows. And
Yeah.
I think Job for a Cowboy, who weirdly released some new music recently, were playing that Lamb of God show as well. And I think they were like the first band I ever saw that were really extreme metal. And I just remember walking in the room and just be like, whoa, what the hell is this? So
Right.
all that good stuff there, and it's kind of branched off into its own thing from there and started getting my own taste. And yeah, just some awesome bands in there, just to name a few.
Are there any artists that you're into that, despite the sort of heavier side of music that you're involved in, people might be surprised to hear that you're a fan of them, So I think sometimes when playing more technical music, I've definitely, for myself, have gone through phases where I listen to a lot of that. But then obviously to just take a break and sort of shut off the analytic aspect of my head where I feel like I have to sort of intellectualize and analyze everything that's happening. Sometimes it's nice just to listen to music and just enjoy it. It sounds funny to even hear myself saying that, but it certainly is. Are there some artists out there that sort of occupy that part of your brain?
Yeah, I've always been, a fan of music first and foremost. My parents are both, listen to different kinds of music, and I've never been closed off to genres or, listen to one particular thing. Just thinking of a few artists I really like, Leonard Cohen, I think, very poetic, completely opposite to this kind of stuff. Arctic Monkeys, another UK band. I
Yeah.
mean, their newer stuff's very relaxing.
Totally.
Quite enjoy listening to that. Serge Gainsbourg, the French crooner. I've got one of his CDs I listen to while I'm driving around, and I could get into the whole hip hop realm as well. MF Doom, that new JPEG Mafia, Danny Brown projects I've been listening to quite a lot, which I guess it has more in common with metal and isn't very relaxing, but
yeah.
but I mean, so much good music out there, especially in the age of the internet, where you can access anything immediately. It's,
Totally.
If you're into different things, there's just so much out there.
Absolutely, man. Well, aside from riding around in the car and listening to your parents' music and getting into the heavier music via shows and whatnot, what did you do when you were growing up in England? What was it? Were you into sports? Did you do any musical sort of academics? Did you study with anyone? What was like the earlier part of your life like?
Well, I went to the Brit School, which is a bit of a kind of famous school for producing a lot of musicians.
Huh.
But I didn't do music there. I did theatre. So
Oh.
I didn't. I don't come from that sort of esteemed background. But just to prattle a few off, Amy Winehouse.
Oh yeah.
Very briefly attended the school with Adele.
Wow.
Yeah, just loads of really big names. A band I'm really into that I'm going to name drop that were in at the school a few years. I found out later, a few years below me, are Black Midi, who I think are a really amazing band with some really cool drum parts and an amazing drummer behind them. So I'd recommend anyone who's a metalhead who's wants to dive in something a bit different to check them out.
Right on.
But yeah, I mean, I did acting, so I wasn't really, I didn't get to jam with anyone cool, unfortunately, while I was at school. But before that, I was in a steel band, which was quite cool with my school. Before that, I was the drummer in the steel pan sort of group, which was quite cool. But yeah, I mean, that was kind of my early education, really. And yeah, I didn't really get to jam. As I said, I didn't really get to jam with anyone cool at the Brit School.
Right.
I can think of, but my drum teacher is the drummer for Adam Ant.
Oh wow!
Which I think is quite cool.
That's cool. Yeah,
he's really cool. So I had sort of out of curricular drum lessons at the school, which was really awesome while I was studying theatre. So that's a cool one, and he was an awesome drummer as well.
Right on, man. You'd mentioned doing shows locally and this and that and the other. What are some of the cool bands, I guess, that y'all have played with when on some of these tours, and or drummers that you've met along the way within those bands potentially?
Yeah, there's some awesome bands. I think I've name dropped already. Our most recent tour was with Boris, the Japanese sort of experimental band. They had a fill-in drummer for this one. Atsuo is the it was sort of on frontman duties. He's the regular drummer for Boris. He did hop on the drums for the last few songs, which was really cool. But they had a really, really awesome and nice guy called Muccio, who I didn't speak much English, and we didn't speak much Japanese, but we had some sort of great interactions with him, and he was a really cool guy. We played one show where we had to we basically got really messed up by Brexit, couldn't cross from Ireland to the UK, and ended up almost missing a show in Scotland because of that. And Muccio kindly let me borrow his drum kit for that show. So he literally, I think, got a later ferry because we missed the ferry because of loads of paperwork stupidness, even though we were traveling from essentially the same country to the same country.
Right.
Yeah, it was just ridiculous. And then we basically sped down the motorway to get to the show, and I jumped on his kit, and it was set up a little bit differently to how I would have liked it. But he had a very low stall, and I remember he had the kind of Iron Maiden kind of toms up here, which I'm not used to. I have everything really flat on my drum kit, but
Right.
we did like a 15-minute kind of grindcore set for that one. Just literally ran in the venue, jumped on his kit, put a few of my bits up, and then played a really fast double time. I think we did like 5 songs in 15 minutes that should have taken about half an hour, and
Right.
which was really cool. But yeah, shout out to Boris on that one for being so kind and helping us make that gig possible, that even though it was just absolute chaos.
When you think back to some of your early gigs, are there any particularly bizarre ones that you can think of? I know, once you get to a certain level, I think the gigs become a little bit more and more redundant and sort of less erratic. But initially, when you're starting out and you don't really know where you're not familiar with the venue nor who's going to be doing sound, and all of that is just sort of in flux. Really kind of crazy, erratic things can happen on a set. I remember like my early gigs. It was always that. Did y'all sort of experience kind of crazy venues and or just bizarre shows initially when y'all were first getting out there?
Yeah, I remember. Some of the sort of early DIY ones we did. I remember once we like played this gig. The promoter did an amazing job getting it all together, but I think we ended up playing like quite early on, so it was like 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
It was essentially just in a pub, so not many people had turned up yet, and it was before we'd only just started out, so we didn't really have any music out, so not many people came apart from the other bands and 1 or 2 people, and then just these old guys who had just come for a pint.
Oh no,
like, what the hell is this? Yeah. So that always sticks out to me, so because they were just like, what the hell is this? And there's a lot of gigs like that where not many people used to show up,
of course,
and then suddenly the pandemic hits, and we've come back to playing shows to thousands of people, which is really overwhelming to
That's
think
awesome.
about, because I mean, there's just a load of gigs. I think like a bit of a meme in the UK is every venue seems to have 3 flights of stairs to get all of your stuff up to the room that you're playing in, because we're not spaced out as much as the US, and everything's for some reason built upwards rather than spread out. So
right.
There's a lot of like carrying things upstairs, and there's a few venues like that we used to play where I'm just like, you get to it and it's like, oh yeah, you can put your drum kit through there, and you open the double doors and then it's up like 4 flights. You're just, fuck's sake.
Absolutely.
I mean, no pain, no gain, I guess, and stuff like that. You get used to super quick, especially when you're a touring band. And I guess that once you've gigged enough, you just kind of let everything roll over you and just relax and just think, we're going to play a show, it's going to be fine. But
right.
in the back of your head, you're kind of screaming a little bit. But that's just what it's about.
Do you enjoy touring? I know whenever I was doing it, I was always kind of battling the circular scenario of sort of being half tired, not sleeping well, a little sore from being in a van, and then getting up for the show and then having drinks and being a little bit hungover the next day, and then just rinse and repeat. It's like Groundhog's Day. And it would always drive me a little crazy. It was kind of hard for me to sort of get into a groove without just feeling sort of uprooted and awkward.
Yeah, it is a lot. I mean, the tour we've just done with Boris earlier in the year, I mean, that was the longest tour we've ever done. It was just over 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And the most we'd done before that was maybe 12 or 13 days with a couple of breaks, but this one was quite full on, and it was our first time in Europe as well, so we were contending with ferries and the Eurostar tunnel and all stuff like that. So and longer drives than we're used to. I mean, in the UK, the most you're going to really get is if you're going from the Midlands to Scotland, which I know probably in American terms sounds pathetic, but it might be like 4 hours.
Yeah, that's like, nothing.
Oh. Yeah,
that's nothing there.
But in Europe, we had some slightly longer ones, and I mean, I weirdly I was working for some of the tour, so I'd do like half days remote, with my company I work with my day job. I won't get too obviously into that, but they were kind enough to save some holiday days so we could do some more shows. They said, you can do some remote working if you want. So
What's your day gig then?
I organise conferences, so I just work for a publishing company. So
Oh, gotcha.
yeah, just sort of some logistical stuff that I can do remotely as well. But it's a Monday to Friday job. So
Yeah.
the way I sort of battled that was I had my half days, like 9 to 12, 9 to 1, where I'd log in, and then I sort of just let loose on the weekend, kind of how I would normally, which was really nice. So I sort of was looking at the tour post, and I was like, oh, I hope it falls on Ireland the weekend, so
Right.
we can have a good drink. But yeah, I guess that did kind of ground me a little bit, which was nice. As you're saying, like sometimes you can be playing a long tour and you just end up drinking 3 or 4 beers a day just because it's kind of just the thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah.
And on all the other tours we've done, I did that, but it kind of grounded me a little bit, having to get up a little bit earlier and doing a little bit of work in the van and in the hotels, and it was a bit more structured, which was nice.
Gotcha.
I don't want to do it every time, but it's it's a good learning curve, and I think we all came out of it. We weren't strangling each other by the end of it, and we all had a hug at the end. So I think first long tour and EU tour was successful.
You mentioned, I guess, Mirrors would have been the one that was released during COVID. Was that like 2021 or so?
Yeah, 2021 that came out.
Right. That's an interesting thing for y'all because you release it, like you said, you're locked down. You don't really have a sense of how it's connecting with people so much. Then all of that, the lockdowns end, pandemic, over, you get out, you're playing shows, and you're like, oh, this is actually resonating with people. So you were in an interesting sort of isolated sense of how your music was connecting with people until you came out of that, which is an interesting perspective.
Yeah, it was really strange because, as I said, we used to play shows, and there'd maybe like 10, 15 people there, and we'd be playing stuff from that wasn't released, and we'd get the odd like 1 or 2 people come up to us and be like, oh, you're gonna do really well, and we can see it and stuff, and you're like, just think, oh, they probably had a few beers and they're just being really friendly, but
Yeah.
I mean that's the kind of the closest we got to it, but yeah, I mean it's been really amazing, and we're kind of just ticking off all these bucket list dream things we've always wanted to do, and
Nice.
yeah, just feel really lucky. Just I have to mention Prosthetic Records again, our booking agents we've worked with, and all the people that have supported us by buying records. They're the reason we can do these cool things we've always dreamed of. And I think what I was going to say earlier was I'd really love to get over to the US, Canada at some point, and play over the seas in that side, because we have such a passionate fan base from America. We can see by the things we're selling and the comments people leave that it'd be really awesome. So that's the next thing that we'd really like to do.
Hell yeah, man. And the tour that you said that's coming up, about how many dates is that? And is that taking you back out through Europe again, were you saying?
No, so we basically got two things left this year. So we've got a one-off show in October in the Netherlands, which we're really looking forward to. And then we got this UK tour with Employed to Serve, who are just an amazing band. They've recently come back from touring with Kajura. They're just the nicest, friendliest people. A couple of the members of the band run a really cool UK label called Church Road, which has a lot of really awesome bands. And yeah, I think we've got nine dates with them, but it's all back to back, no breaks. So we're gonna smash it out and hopefully bring some more awesome experiences to the UK together.
Awesome, man. Well, yeah, dude. Josh, thanks for sitting down with me. Appreciate the time. Congrats on the record. And yeah, hopefully y'all, Pupil Slicer will be coming in through the States. I'd love to see y'all out here. Try to minimize your drives, as you said, hopefully the connecting shows won't absolutely exhaust you.
Yeah, hopefully. And then hopefully we can do as much as we can while we're out there, because US is so big, we're always going to miss a few cities. So
absolutely,
we're going to try and come a couple of times maybe, but we'll see how it all pans out. But yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much for having me on, and it's always fun to talk drums and the band. And yeah, it's been really nice to talk to you, and thanks to everyone who's listening.
All right, that about does it for this episode. Please do keep your eyes and ears peeled for subsequent episodes. Thanks to Josh and the Pupil Slicer gang, and we'll catch y'all on the next one. Crash, bang, boom.